Cryptocurrencies are digital currencies that use cryptography to secure transaction. They are decentralized, meaning that they are not issued by a central authority like a bank. And many crypto enthusiasts will say that they're private, secure, and they benefit users because they cut off intermediaries. At the same time, this quality makes them vulnerable to crime and money laundering. Hi, my name is Julia. I'm an anti-money laundering specialist, and today we're talking about crypto laundering. We need to distinguish between two phases. The first phase is when the criminal use crypto technologies to commit a crime, for example, theft or fraud. And the second phase is when crypto laundering techniques are used to launder the money. This is because criminals need to find a way to disguise the origin and the destination of the funds, and ultimately they need to convert their cryptos into fiat currency to enjoy their profit. Max Maher made a great video about crypto laundering in which talks about a couple that was accused of money laundering in 2022. I'll let him explain the specific crypto laundering technique that the couple used.
Funds. The first trick they use is a coin mixer, which is exactly what you think it is. It's a third-party service that takes cryptos from a bunch of different users, mixes them all together, dirty cryptos right there with clean ones from many different addresses, before finally handing them back to you immaculate and much, much harder to trace. It's like taking dirty popcorn off the floor, putting it back in the batch and shaking it up. Everyone's favorite couple also use what's called a peel chain. A peel chain is basically when you shuffle a small number of coins into mini wallets in attempt to not raise any suspicion. Then at each passage, you convert just a tiny portion of these cryptos into dollars. Rinse and repeat, doing that hundreds or even thousands of times. If Escobar was around, he probably would be using this trick right now. But it's always a good idea to diversify strategies. The Bitfinex couple also use something called chain hopping. That's where you convert funds from one cryptocurrency to another, like Bitcoin to Monero, a privacy coin.
Let's have a look at a case study. The first known ransomware attack was in the late 1980s, when an Englishman sent a floppy disk that encrypted files when inserted in a computer and requested to mail cash to a PO box in Panama. The problem with this ransomware, and many ransomware that followed, was the lack of a reliable payment method, as the cash and checks sent by mail were often seized. Crypto resolved this problem. In May 2017, the WannaCry malware was designed and launched to exploit a vulnerability in Microsoft computers. Just a couple of months prior, Microsoft has released a patch that resolved the security issue, and the criminals behind WannaCry knew that many people do not install the security updates right away, and in fact, the malware spread quickly. Once infected a computer, the WannaCry malware will encrypt all the files, and the victims will receive a message that asks them to pay $300 in Bitcoin in one of 3 specified Bitcoin addresses. The attack lasted for 2 days until a British cybersecurity analyst found the kill switch and was able to stop the spread of the malware. By that time, 250,000 computers were infected, and if each of them had paid the $300, the attacker would have received $75 million. Instead, only $142,000 were paid into the Bitcoin addresses. Why? All transactions in Bitcoins are recorded online on a public ledger. This means that everyone can see from which Bitcoin address the payment is coming from, to which Bitcoin address is going, and how much the payment is. A Bitcoin address is a unique string of letters and numbers which can be linked to an individual. Because the WannaCry attack was all over the news, many cybersecurity experts and just in general people interested in the story were monitoring the Bitcoin ledger. Nobody knew the identity of the criminals behind WannaCry, but the Bitcoin addresses, the unique string of letters and numbers, were known. And because of these reasons, many victims were discouraged to pay. Once WannaCry was shut down, the first phase is concluded, the money is under control of the criminals, and this is when the crypto laundering phase starts. Because all eyes were pointed to the Bitcoin ledger, the money didn't move for a few months until July and August 2017, when the 3 Bitcoin addresses were emptied. At this point, the criminals used coin swap services to exchange their Bitcoin in other cryptocurrency and trying to disguise the destination of the funds. To do so, they use Shapeshift and Changelly, that are two virtual asset service providers that at the time were famous for not asking clients to provide IDs. This means that Shapeshift and Changelly were not able to tell the investigators who were the people behind those anonymous Bitcoin addresses. Despite that, cybersecurity researchers at Google, in collaboration with other cybersecurity firms, figure out that the WannaCry malware attack was connected to the Lazarus group. The Lazarus Group is a hacker group allegedly run by North Korea. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, colloquially known as North Korea, has been subject to United Nations sanctions since 2017 as a response to its nuclear and missile tests. The UN sanctions have weakened the already fragile North Korean economy, and North Korea has resorted to state-sponsored cybercrime, like the Lazarus Group. According to a recent report by a panel of experts from the United Nations Security Council, North Korean state-sponsored cyber actors are responsible for stealing approximately $2.3 billion in crypto between 2017 and 2022, making North Korea the world's most prolific cyber thief. The money is used by North Korea to fund its nuclear and weapon programs. Unfortunately, in the future, the United Nations will not be able to monitor North Korean cyber attacks because in March 2024, Russia, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, had vetoed a resolution to renew the mandate of the special panel of experts on North Korea's sanction evasions. According to the UN Security Council, the Lazarus Group used voice phishing, which involves phone calls delivered via voice over IP features to mimic a legitimate entity phone number like a bank or a government agency. Then, the Lazarus Group hackers use social engineering. In other words, they present themselves as legitimate employee of a bank or of the police to gain trust from the victim and get sensitive information from them, like credit card numbers, bank account details, and passwords. The Lazarus Group continues to use ransomware attacks, but this type of attacks have changed a lot since WannaCry. Cybercrime entrepreneurs saw a gap in the market and developed a new business model called ransomware as a service that copies the famous software as a service. In this business model, there are two sides. On one side, there is the person that creates the malware and sells to the cyber attacker, and on the other side, there is the cyber attacker that buys the malware, buys the know-how kit, and then distributes it to the victims. In this way, a cyber attacker doesn't have to have all the technological skills to build a malware. They can just buy from someone else. It's capitalism, baby. With this service, the cyber attacker can save a lot of time and focus their energy on the extortion and negotiation with the victim. And they can also share the Bitcoin address directly with the victims instead of broadcasting them to the whole world. As a consequence, the cyber attack does not need to target many people, asking each of them a few $100s. Instead, they can target a few big victims who can pay a lot of money, like private hospitals or big corporations. Because of these reasons, the size of individual ransomware skyrocketed to several $1,000,000 per payment. It is hard to give a precise figure of ransomware profit because oftentimes victims pay without reporting the crime to the authorities out of shame or out of fear, but we are talking about hundreds of millions US dollars every year. As reported by the UN Security Council, the Lazarus Group, like many other cybercriminals, they use coin swapping and coin mixing in the laundering process. To do so, they use intermediaries that are virtual asset service providers. These intermediaries can knowingly or unknowingly help criminals launder money. And to try and prevent that, the international community have developed standards. The Financial Action Task Force, FATF, is the international watchdog for anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism, which we're going to call AML in short. One of the primary functions of the FATF is to develop global AML standards, which are enshrined in a document called FATF Recommendations. In 2018, the FATF amended its recommendation to clarify that AML standards also apply to financial transactions that involve virtual assets, so that involve cryptocurrency. In practice, intermediaries that buy and sell crypto, exchange crypto, or transfer crypto on behalf of a customer need to identify the customer and need to monitor transaction. At the same time, peer-to-peer crypto transactions remain outside the scope of AML. In a way, it's similar to cash. If I'm giving thousands of dollars in cash to another person, AML compliance legislations do not apply, but if I need an intermediary, like I need to deposit the cash in a bank account and send a wire transfer to another person, then the AML compliance kicks in. One aspect of virtual asset technology that has proven to be complex is compliance with Recommendation 16, the so-called travel rule. Ordinarily, when I want to send money abroad, I will go to my bank and I will do a wire transfer. The bank will ask for my ID and they will want to know the name of the person I'm sending the money to and the account number of the person I'm sending the money to. Because of the travel rule, they will need to send all of this information along with the wire transfer. And in practice, it means that I'm not able to send money to an anonymous bank account held abroad. Before the travel rule, people could send money abroad to an anonymous bank account in one country that allowed for this type of arrangement, like Switzerland. And obviously, the secrecy and anonymity are very beneficial for crimes and money laundering. The application of the travel rule to cryptocurrency helps detecting and deterring ransomware. Once the victim have paid the Bitcoin into the Bitcoin address, nothing can happen as long as the Bitcoin remains in the address, but eventually the criminal will need to move them out to be able to enjoy the profit. And as soon as the criminal engage a coin swapper, a coin mixer, or any other virtual asset service provider, the provider will ask them their ID, they will monitor the transaction, and in general, they will verify their identity. Obviously, there are ways around it, but asking this question will make it harder and harder for criminals to continue enjoying anonymity. Not surprisingly, crypto enthusiasts are against the travel rule because it compromises privacy, and at the same time, it has been hard for countries to legislate around travel rules for virtual assets. This is because of the peculiar technological challenges of virtual assets, like how in practice do we send the information with the transfer. Cryptocurrency have created new and secure payment method to criminals. Still, cyber criminals have the same problems that traditional criminals have. They need to find a way to launder their proceeds of crime. To do so, they use a variety of virtual asset service providers to store, exchange, and transfer their cryptocurrency. This is also because cryptocurrency remain an highly speculative asset and criminals need to exchange the cryptocurrency into fiat currency. Also, we need to remember that despite the fact that crypto laundering is on the rise, the majority of money laundering still happens through the traditional banking system. Some solution to prevent cybercrime can be done at a personal and business level. The United Nations Security Council expert panel recommend companies and virtual asset service providers to increase their cyber hygiene, especially by implementing a two-factor authentication for transactions. At the same time, the WannaCry case study teaches us how we should always make sure to implement the security updates as soon as they are released by our software providers. I made another video in which I talk about cybersecurity with a cybersecurity expert. Go check it out if you want to know more. In addition to that, we can also expect systemic measures to be applied at the national level to protect us from crypto laundering. However, we've been very slow catching up with technology. If we consider that the first Bitcoin were mined in 2009, it took 9 years to the FATF just to set a clear path for anti-cryptolaundering. Said that, we're also very far from the target because from the point in which standards are set to the point in which they are consistently applied, it's a very long road. At the time of recording, Australia and New Zealand are changing the legislation around virtual asset service provider and AML obligations. Virtual asset service provider are covered by AML obligation in New Zealand since the 1st of June 2024, and they will be covered in Australia once Tranche 2 become operational, sometimes at the beginning of 2025. If you are a virtual asset service provider in Australia or New Zealand and you have any question of how AML obligation apply to you, send me a message. I'll see what I can do to help you. If you made it to here, like, comment, subscribe, you know the usual. If you're interested on this topic, I recommend Cryptolaunderers. It's a great book. I use it a lot for the research of this video. My name is Julia from Total AML. This is all from me now, and I'll see you in the next one.